wrong with you? Hey!
What do you care? It's none of your business. I have my own path to follow now. Is this really Naruto? What's this power? It's overwhelming. What? Tell me, what are you?
I'm your friend!
Why? Why do you care so much about me?
It's because I finally have a bond with someone. That's exactly why I'm going to...
This will probably be my last jutsu. Kidding! Be gone with the thunderclap.
That battle was all according to Itachi's design. He was deeply worried about you. He wept tears of blood and slaughtered his own flesh and blood for the sake of his village. But he couldn't kill you. Do you understand what that means? To him, your life.
The walls.
Sasuke.
No.
I am sorry, Sasuke, but this is it.
We're gonna freeze out here. Let's go back.
I'll bear the burden of your hate, and we'll die together.
What's wrong?
Nothing at all.
Time had lost all meaning within the suffocating embrace of the divine tree. For what felt like an eternity, Naruto Uzumaki existed only as a consciousness trapped in a calcified nightmare, suspended in a state of living death alongside his closest friend and rival, Sasuke Uchiha. They were entombed within the grotesque, pulsating roots of a ten-tails seedling hidden deep within an unknown Otsutsuki fortress, their chakra being methodically siphoned away to nurture a fruit that would bring about the end of their world. Naruto could feel the slow, agonizing drain, a spiritual leeching that left him feeling colder and emptier than even the moment Kurama had faded from existence. He was helpless, immobile, encased in a hard, amber-like resin that dampened his senses and suppressed his immense power. He drifted in and out of awareness, haunted by fragmented memories of Boruto, Hinata, and the village he had sworn to protect, all slowly fading into the encroaching darkness of oblivion. But the process, ancient and cosmic in its design, began to fracture. The divine tree, a biological weapon designed to consume life, reacted unpredictably to the anomalous chakra signature within Naruto. It encountered the lingering, potent remnants of Baryon mode, a power that had once burned away the life force of an Otsutsuki, and the sheer, stubborn resilience of an Uzumaki host who refused to die, instead of draining him completely until he was a dried husk. The flow of chakra violently reversed. The tree, in a spasm of biological confusion, began dumping raw, unfiltered genetic data and ancient Otsutsuki chakra back into Naruto's dying body. It felt like molten lead being poured into his veins. Deep within the resin cocoon, Naruto's body convulsed. His heart, which had slowed to a near stop, hammered against his ribs with terrifying velocity. The pain was transcendent, a forced evolution tearing apart his cellular structure and rebuilding it simultaneously. A guttural roar, muffled by the hardened shell around him, tore from his throat. The resin, harder than diamond, began to spiderweb with cracks, leaking intense, vibrant purple light instead of the familiar orange glow of the Nine Tails. With one final, desperate surge of this newfound, alien power, Naruto shattered his prison. Shards of petrified wood exploded outward, raining down onto the cold stone floor of the cavernous chamber. Naruto collapsed onto his hands and knees, gasping for air that tasted stale and metallic. His body felt incredibly heavy, yet paradoxically overflowing with a cold, sharp power that hummed beneath his skin, a sensation vastly different from the warm, fiery cloak of Kurama. He trembled, spitting up a mixture of saliva and blood, trying to orient himself in the dim light emitted by the bioluminescent roots surrounding him. He crawled toward a small, stagnant pool of water formed by centuries of condensation dripping from the cavern ceiling, needing to wash the taste of death from his mouth. As he leaned over the water, he froze. The reflection staring back at him was not the seventh Hokage he knew. The cerulean blue eyes, so often filled with warmth and unwavering determination, were gone. In their place sat the cold, ripple-patterned majesty of the Rinnegan, glowing with a fierce, violet intensity in both sockets. The sheer visual information flooding his brain was overwhelming. He could see the microscopic flow of chakra in the air, the heat signatures of the dormant roots, the very structure of reality around him. The tree hadn't just held him captive. It had forced a grotesque evolution upon him, adapting his mortal body to wield the power of gods just to survive the influx of its energy. Sasuke. The name tore from Naruto's raspy throat as reality crashed back in. He scrambled over the uneven ground to the adjacent root system where Sasuke remained entombed. Sasuke looked lifeless, suspended in the translucent wood like a specimen in amber. Panic surged through Naruto. He instinctively extended his right palm, and without weaving a single sign, a pitch-black chakra receiver rod materialized from his flesh. He slashed violently at the resin, the rod shearing through the divine material as if it were paper. As the prison shattered, Sasuke collapsed forward, dead weight falling into Naruto's ready arms. Sasuke, hey, wake up. We have to move. Naruto yelled, shaking his friend's shoulder, his new eyes scanning Sasuke's body for injuries. Sasuke groaned, a sound of pure agony, and immediately clutched his hands to his face. Thick streams of fresh blood leaked from beneath his fingers, staining his pale cheeks crimson. Naruto. His voice was a brittle whisper, laced with confusion and pain. My eyes. I can't. They feel like they're on fire. I can't open them. Naruto's heart sank. Whatever the tree had done to save him, it seemed to have rejected Sasuke, perhaps trying to forcibly reclaim the Indra chakra within him, damaging his visual jutsu in the process. Don't worry, I've got you. I'm not letting go, Naruto vowed, gritting his teeth as he hoisted his near-unconscious friend onto his back. The weight was immense in his weakened state, but he pushed through. He staggered to his feet, looking around the massive, root-infested chamber. This wasn't just a hideout. It was an ancient fortress built within a pocket dimension. And for the first time, with the omniscient sight of the Rinnegan piercing through the thick stone walls and dimensional barriers, Naruto looked up. He looked past the cavern ceiling, past the artificial atmosphere of this dimension, and into the deep void of space beyond. What he saw made his blood run colder than the stone beneath his feet. It wasn't just empty space. He saw signatures of chakra, massive, cold, and malevolent, approaching at incredible speeds. It wasn't one or two stragglers like Momoshiki or Ishiki. It was an armada. Hundreds of distinct god-tier chakra sources were converging on their location. A legion of celestial parasites descending upon them. "We aren't alone, Sasuke," Naruto whispered to the unconscious man on his back, his grip tightening on Sasuke's legs as he stared up at the unseen horror approaching through the void. "The threat isn't gone, it's just arriving. And whatever is coming, it makes Jigen look like a scout." The escape from the depths of the incubation chamber was a blur of sterile white corridors and agonizing physical exertion. Naruto Uzumaki, now bearing the ocular might of the Sage of Six Paths, sprinted through the labyrinthine interior of the Otsutsuki fortress, the slap of his sandals echoing against walls that hummed with a low, ominous frequency. On his back, Sasuke remained a dead weight, his breathing shallow and ragged, the blood drying into dark crusts on his cheeks. Naruto's new vision was both a blessing and a curse. The Rinnegan didn't just see the path forward. It saw the flow of energy in the very air, the structural weaknesses in the architecture, and the terrifying density of the dimensional barriers that trapped them here. Every blink sent a spike of migraine-inducing pain through Naruto's skull, his brain struggling to process the flood of visual data without the years of training Sasuke had possessed. They burst through a massive, sealed doorway, Naruto instinctively channeling a burst of repulsive gravity, Shinra Tensei, to blast the heavy stone doors off their hinges. They skidded into what appeared to be a central command atrium, a colossal domed room dominated by a floating, rotating sphere of chakra that acted as a stellar map. This was the heart of the fortress, the nerve center from which the Otsutsuki monitored their harvest grounds. Naruto fell to one knee, gently lowering Sasuke to the floor, needing a moment to stabilize his erratic chakra flow. The sheer size of the room was daunting, filled with floating monoliths covered in glowing glyphs that Naruto couldn't read. Yet somehow, through the intuition granted by his new eyes, he began to understand. He approached the central console, his hand hovering over a panel of liquid light. The Rinnegan pulsed, and the console reacted, recognizing the ocular signature as one of high authority. The room darkened, and the stellar map expanded, filling the air with millions of stars. But it wasn't a peaceful night sky. It was a battlefield. Naruto watched in horror as the projection shifted to display the current state of the Otsutsuki clan. The map was divided. Massive swathes of the galaxy were highlighted in angry crimson, while others pulsed in a defensive azure. Lines of connection between star systems were snapping. Planets were blinking out of existence. It wasn't just an invasion force heading for them. It was a schism. The main family, the branch Momoshiki and Ishiki belonged to, was under siege. A rogue faction, ancient and brutal, had risen from the edges of the universe, consuming everything in its path to accumulate power for a war of supremacy. The armada Naruto had sensed earlier wasn't coming to harvest Earth specifically. They were fleeing the front lines, looking to turn Earth into a fortress and its people into soldiers. "It's not just us," Naruto whispered to the silence, the realization chilling him to the bone. "They're fighting each other, a civil war of gods." Desperate for answers closer to home, Naruto manipulated the projection, his mind screaming the image of Earth. The map zoomed in violently, The image of his home planet materialized, but it was shrouded in a disturbing gray haze. He tried to focus on Konoha, on the chakra signatures of his family. He searched for Hinata, for Himawari, for Kawaki, but the signals were faint, distorted by some kind of massive interference barrier erected around the planet. Then he found a pulse, a singular, defiant spark of lightning and wind in the darkness. Burrito. The projection shifted to show a real-time logical feed of the Leaf Village ruins. Standing atop the shattered Hokage monument, alone against a backdrop of flames and destruction, was his son. But Burrito looked different, hardened, scarred, wielding a sword that looked painfully familiar, his karma seal fully activated but controlled. He was fighting off waves of what looked like ten-tails fission beings, protecting the few survivors huddled in the shelters. Burrito. Naruto choked back a sob, his hand reaching out to the intangible light. You're alive. Alert. Unauthorized access detected. Genetic signature. Impure. The mechanical, cold voice echoed from the walls. The fortress had finally realized that the Rinnegan accessing its databanks belonged to a human vessel, not a pure-blood Otsutsuki. The floor panels slid open, and dozens of automaton puppets, sleek, faceless machines armed with chakra-draining spears, rose from the ground. They surrounded Naruto and the unconscious Sasuke, their weapons humming with lethal intent. Naruto stood up, his face hardening. The sadness vanished, replaced by the cold fury of a father and a Hokage. He looked at Sasuke, then at the approaching machines. He didn't have Kurama's strength anymore. He didn't have his old reserves. But he had the eyes of a god, and he had a war to stop. I don't have time to play with dolls, Naruto growled. The purple rings in his eyes spun. He extended both hands, and the air around him distorted. I need to get home. The air in the command atrium grew heavy, saturated with the killing intent of 50 automaton puppets. These were not the crude wooden constructs of the hidden sand. They were sleek, alabaster nightmares crafted from the same dense, chakra-conductive material as the Otsutsuki black rods. They moved with a fluidity that defied mechanics, their limbs jointless and silent, circling Naruto and the defenseless Sasuke like a pack of wolves cornering wounded prey. Each puppet wielded a double-ended spear that pulsed with a crimson light, a technology designed to disrupt chakra flow on contact, rendering ninjutsu useless. Naruto stood his ground, straddling Sasuke's unconscious form. He felt a bead of sweat trace, a line down his temple, stinging his eye. He was exhausted. The physical toll of the extraction pod still ravaged his muscles, and the Rinnegan was a greedy parasite, constantly demanding a tithe of chakra just to remain active. He didn't have the vast, regenerative ocean of Kurama's chakra to cushion the cost anymore. Every move had to be precise. Every expenditure of energy had to be calculated. The days of spamming thousands of shadow clones were over. Target locked. Elimination protocol. Engage. The monotone voice of the fortress AI signaled the assault. 3 puppets lunged simultaneously, 1 from the front, 2 from the flanks, their spears aiming for Naruto's heart and kidneys. In his old life, Naruto would have met them with a Rasengan or simply tanked the blow. Now, his body moved before he even processed the thought. The Rinnegan didn't just see the attack. It saw the vectors of force and gravity holding the puppets together. Bancho Tenin. Universal pull. Naruto thrust his left hand forward, not pushing but pulling. The puppet attacking from the front was violently yanked off its trajectory, its momentum accelerating uncontrollably until it impaled itself on the spear of the puppet flanking from the right. Metal screeched against metal, sparks showering the floor. With his right hand, Naruto manifested a black chakra receiver rod, ducking under the third puppet's strike and driving the rod upward through its chassis. severing its central chakra core. It collapsed instantly. I can see it. I can see everything. Naruto realized, his breath ragged. The clarity of vision was intoxicating. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining 47 puppets adjusted their tactics instantly, processing the data of their fallen comrades. They didn't rush. They coordinated. They formed a perimeter, raising their spears in unison. Beams of concentrated plasma fired from the tips, creating a net of searing light that enclosed Naruto. There was no space to dodge. Shinra Tensei. Almighty push. Naruto expanded his chakra outward in a spherical shockwave. The repulsive force slammed into the plasma beams, scattering them into harmless sparks, and hit the front line of puppets with the force of a freight train. The machines were blasted backward, smashing into the stellar map consoles and cracking the stone walls. But the strain was immediate. Naruto fell to one knee, clutching his chest. His vision blurred for a second. The Shinra Tensei had cost him too much. He could feel his reserves dipping into the danger zone. Naruto! The weak rasp came from below. Sasuke was stirring, his hand gripping Naruto's ankle. Stop wasting chakra. You're awake. Naruto glanced down, relief washing over him. Don't move, your eyes are still bleeding. The portal. Sasuke coughed, pointing blindly towards the far end of the atrium where a massive, ring-like structure stood dormant. That is a gateway. It connects dimensions. We need to power it. Power it? I can barely keep these tin cans off us. Naruto yelled, deflecting another spear with his chakra rod. Use the Preta Path. Sasuke whispered, struggling to sit up despite the blindness. Absorb their jutsu. Feed the gate. Naruto's eyes widened. He had forgotten. The Rinnegan wasn't just about gravity. It was about absorption. He looked at the next wave of puppets, charging up a massive, combined energy blast. It was a sphere of pure destructive chakra, big enough to vaporize the entire room. Naruto didn't run. He stood up, dropped his chakra rod, and held out both hands, palms facing the incoming annihilation. He forced himself to relax, to open his chakra network instead of hardening it. Come on then, he growled. Give me everything you got. The puppets fired. The massive beam of energy roared across the room, blindingly bright. It hit Naruto's palms and vanished. The Gakido Preta Path activated. Naruto felt the foreign chakra rushing into his system, hot and abrasive, but filling the void left by his exhaustion. He channeled it instantly, acting as a living conduit, directing the absorbed energy out through his feet and into the floor, guiding it towards the massive ring Sasuke had pointed out. The room hummed. The dormant gateway shivered, ancient runes lighting up along its rim. A swirling vortex of blue and black energy began to form in the center of the ring. It was unstable, chaotic, but it was a way out. It's opening! Naruto shouted, feeling his strength returning as he drained the puppets dry. The constructs, their energy source stolen, collapsed one by one, lifeless shells clattering to the ground. Naruto scooped Sasuke up again, adrenaline masking the pain in his muscles. He sprinted towards the vortex. The fortress began to shake. The AI, realizing the prisoners were escaping, initiated a self-destruct sequence to collapse the dimension. Rocks began to fall from the ceiling. The stellar map flickered and died. Hold on, Sasuke! Naruto yelled over the roar of the collapsing room. We're going home. He leaped into the swirling vortex, just as a massive slab of the ceiling crashed down where they had stood seconds before. They were swallowed by the dimensional tunnel, leaving the fortress and the approaching Otsutsuki armada behind, but jumping blindly into the unknown. The transition from the dimensional void to physical reality was not a graceful arrival. it was a violent expulsion. The vortex spat Naruto and Sasuke out high above the atmosphere of their home planet, gravity instantly seizing their weakened bodies. They plummeted through a thick, oppressive layer of gray clouds that smelled of ozone and burnt carbon. Naruto, clutching Sasuke tightly against his chest, tried to muster the chakra for flight, but his reserves were sputtering. The Rinnegan, still active and draining him, offered no levitation without the requisite chakra to fuel it. He barely managed to twist his body in midair, manifesting a weak wind release to cushion their impact as they crashed through the canopy of a dead forest. They hit the earth with a bone-jarring thud, carving a trench through the dry, cracked soil. Dust and splintered wood filled the air. For a long moment, there was only the sound of Naruto's ragged breathing and the distant, rolling thunder of a storm that offered no rain. Naruto groaned, pushing a fallen log off his legs. He checked Sasuke immediately. The Uchiha was conscious but pale, his eyes still tightly shut, blood crusted over his cheeks like war paint. "Sasuke, we made it. We're on Earth." "It feels wrong," Sasuke murmured, his head tilting as he tried to sense their surroundings without his vision. "The nature energy, it's thin, dying, and I don't sense the village outposts." Naruto stumbled to his feet, wiping dirt from his face. He looked up, and his heart stopped. They had landed on the outskirts of what used to be the Fire Country's lush forests. Now, it was a wasteland of petrified trees and gray ash. But that wasn't what terrified him. In the distance, visible through the haze, stood the Great Naruto Bridge, or what was left of it. It was collapsed, submerged in a river that had run dry. Beyond that, the geography was scarred with massive craters, the kind left by tailed beast bombs. Naruto activated the Rinnegan, zooming his vision toward the horizon where Konoha should be. The village was there, but it wasn't the open, bustling metropolis he had left. It was a fortress city, enclosed within a massive, shimmering violet barrier that extended high into the sky. The Hokage Rock, the symbol of the village's history, was half destroyed. The faces of the first through sixth Hokage were obliterated. His own face, the seventh, had a massive gash running through it. But most shocking of all was the addition of a crude, hasty carving next to his. An eighth face, one he didn't recognize immediately due to the damage. "Sasuke." Naruto's voice trembled with a horror deeper than any physical wound. How long were we inside that tree?" "Time flows differently in their dimensions," Sasuke whispered, realization dawning on him. "Days there could be years here." "Halt! Identification!" The shout came from the trees. Naruto whipped around, his Rinnegan flaring instinctively. Emerging from the dead brush was a squad of 4 shinobi. They wore Konoha headbands, but their vests were tattered, reinforced with scavenged armor. They looked malnourished, hardened, and terrified. "Wait!" Naruto stepped forward, raising his hands. "I'm not an enemy. I'm..." "Purple Eyes! The Rinnegan!" One of the Chunin screamed, terror breaking his voice. "It's a code sympathizer. Or one of them. Open fire." "No, stop." The squad didn't hesitate. They unleashed a barrage of fire style and kunai tagged with explosive notes. The desperation in their attack was palpable. These weren't soldiers following protocol. They were survivors fighting a monster. Naruto didn't want to hurt them. He couldn't. He channeled a tiny fraction of his chakra, Shinra Tensei. The invisible wall of gravity expanded just enough to deflect the kunai and dissipate the flames, knocking the soldiers off their feet without breaking their bones. They scrambled back, fear intensifying. "I am Uzumaki Naruto, the 7th Hokage." Naruto roared, his voice cracking with emotion. "Look at me." The squad leader, a woman with a scar running down her jaw, shakily got to her feet, holding a radio. She looked at the man before her. The tattered clothes, the pale skin from the resin, and those terrifying, godlike eyes that belonged to the enemy. The 7th Hokage died 3 years ago, she spat, her hand trembling on her kunai. You are a mockery, a skinwalker. Command, this is Patrol Delta. We have a Class S threat in Sector 4, requesting immediate backup from Lord Shikamaru. We are going to die here. 3 years. The words hit Naruto like a physical blow. He staggered back, looking at his hands. He had missed 3 years. Boruto's teenage appearance in the hologram made sense now. The ruin, the war, the 8th face. He had been gone while the world burned. Sasuke, they think we're dead, Naruto whispered, the weight of his failure crushing him. Before he could try to reason with them again, the ground beneath them rumbled. A massive shadow fell over the clearing. The barrier around Konoha pulsed, and a figure descended from the sky, landing between Naruto and the patrol with a crater-forming impact. The dust settled to reveal a woman with short pink hair, wearing a medic's combat uniform that had seen too many battles. Her chakra was flaring violently, the strength of 100 seal glowing on her forehead. She looked older, tired, and consumed by grief. She raised a fist, ready to pulverize the imposter. Sakura-chan! Naruto breathed, tears welling up in his Rinnegan eyes. Sakura froze. The punch that could level a mountain stopped inches from his face. She didn't look at the eyes. She looked at the posture, the whisker marks, the idiot expression of hope mixed with devastation. Her gaze shifted to the broken man on the ground behind him. She saw the sword, the missing arm, the chakra signature that she had spent every night for 3 years praying to sense. Naruto, she whispered, her voice breaking into 1,000 pieces. Sasuke-kun. The reunion was not marked by celebration, but by a frantic, hushed urgency amidst the ruins. Sakura Haruno, a woman who had held the crumbling morale of Konoha together with her bare hands for 3 hellish years, collapsed to her knees not out of weakness, but from the sheer crushing weight of relief. Tears streamed freely down her face, mixing with the dust of the wasteland, as she channeled healing chakra into Sasuke's destroyed tear ducts. The medical ninjutsu glowed with a soft green, a stark contrast to the harsh gray world around them. Naruto stood silently, the wind rustling his tattered clothes, his Rinnegan eyes scanning the perimeter, acutely aware that the patrol squad was still watching him with fingers trembling on their triggers. To them, he was still a monster wearing the face of a dead hero. "We need to move," Sakura choked out, wiping her eyes and instantly switching back to her commander persona. "The barrier patrols will swarm this location in 2 minutes. If they see your eyes, Naruto, they will attack. The order is to kill any Otsutsuki signature on sight. No exceptions." They moved under the cover of Sakura's authority, smuggling the legendary duo into the village not through the main gates, but through the old, collapsed subway tunnels that now served as emergency supply lines. The Konoha Naruto saw from the shadows was a grim, militarized zone. Children didn't play in the streets. They carried crates of ammunition. The academy was a field hospital. The joyous vibrancy of the will of fire had been replaced by the cold, steel resolve of survival. They arrived at the Hokage Tower, which had been fortified with thick chakra-dampening plates. Inside the dim, map-filled office sat Shikamaru Nara. The genius strategist looked decades older. His beard was unkempt, his eyes sunken with dark circles, and he smoked cigarettes with a frantic intensity. He wore the Hokage cloak, but it hung heavily on his shoulders, a burden he never wanted. When the door opened and Naruto stepped in, Shikamaru dropped his cigarette. The ember burned the carpet, but he didn't move. He stared at the Rinnegan, his shadow possession jutsu flaring instinctively before he recognized the chakra signature. Faint, altered, but undeniably Naruto. "You're late," Shikamaru whispered, his voice cracking. "Troublesome. You're 3 years late." After a brief, emotionless explanation of the time dilation within the divine tree dimension, the atmosphere in the room shifted from shock to terrifying strategic analysis. Sasuke, bandaged and blindfolded, sat in the corner, his voice rasping as he corroborated Naruto's story. "So," Shikamaru exhaled smoke, looking at the tactical map covering his desk. "You were trapped in a seedbed, and you broke out." "It's worse than that, Shikamaru." Naruto leaned over the desk, his violet eyes narrowing. "We saw a map. The Otsutsuki aren't just invading us. They are at war with themselves. The main family is being hunted. The army heading here. They aren't coming to plant a tree. They're coming to turn Earth into a stronghold. They are fleeing a losing war in the deep cosmos, and they need soldiers. Biological soldiers." Shikamaru went pale. "Soldiers? You mean the Grimes?" "Grimes?" Naruto asked. "Ten-tails fishin' beings," Sakura explained, stepping forward with a data pad. "Code started it. He turned the Ten-tails into an army of smaller, humanoid monsters. They bite people, turn them into trees, and their consciousness creates a new, sentient divine tree clone. We've been fighting them for 3 years. We're losing Naruto. Slowly. Kawaki sealed the village in that barrier to protect us, but he's become extreme. He hunts anyone who shows signs of resonance." "And Boruto?" Naruto asked the question he dreaded. The room went silent. Shikamaru looked down. "Boruto is public enemy number 1. To the world, he killed the 7th Hokage. To Kawaki, he is an Otsutsuki threat that must be erased. But he's the only reason we're still alive." Shikamaru pointed to a red zone on the map, far outside the village barrier. "He roams the wasteland. He hunts the Code Grimes and the divine tree clones alone. He refuses to come near the village to keep the enemy away from us. He's fighting a one-man war against an army of 10,000. Naruto slammed his fist onto the table, cracking the solid oak. The Rinnegan flared, sending a wave of gravitational pressure that rattled the windows. "He's been alone for 3 years, while I was sleeping. He's not just fighting Code anymore, Naruto." Sasuke spoke up from the shadows, his voice grim. "If what we saw in the fortress is true, the vanguard of that Otsutsuki Civil War fleet is already close. Boruto isn't just fighting monsters. He's likely sensing the arrival of the true enemy, the ones even Jigen feared." Naruto stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. The new power in his veins, the cold, efficient chakra of the divine tree, surged. He didn't feel the warmth of the Nine Tails, but he felt a terrifying clarity. He looked at Shikamaru, then at Sakura. "I need my old gear, and I need to know where Kawaki is," Naruto said, his voice dropping an octave, sounding less like a hero and more like a general. "The Civil War is coming to Earth. If we don't unite Boruto and Kawaki right now, this planet becomes a graveyard for gods." "Naruto, your chakra," Sakura warned. "Your body is unstable. That Rinnegan is eating you alive." "Let it eat," Naruto replied, turning to the window to look at the dark, storm-filled sky. "I rested for 3 years. Now, I'm done sleeping." The wasteland, formerly known as the Valley of the End, was now a cratered hellscape illuminated only by the erratic flashes of lightning. Boruto Uzumaki, now a battle-hardened rogue of 18, moved with the speed of a thunderclap. His cloak was tattered, his right eye scarred and closed, wielding his master's sword with lethal precision. He wasn't fighting a simple army. He was locked in combat with a Shinju, a sentient, humanoid divine tree clone that bore a grotesque resemblance to Bug. "You are slowing down, Otsutsuki Boruto," the Shinju mocked, its voice vibrating through the ground. "Your chakra is fading. Submit. Be devoured. Boruto spat blood, gripping his sword. Shut up. I'm not dying until I fix this mess. Before he could launch his counterattack, the sky screamed. A massive cube of heavy black iron slammed into the ground between Boruto and the Shinju, crushing the earth. Kawaki stood atop it, his karma activated, his arm transformed into a scythe of scientific ninja mayhem. His eyes were cold, fixated solely on Boruto. "You're still breathing, brother," Kawaki growled, ignoring the monster. "I told you, I will kill every last Otsutsuki, even you." "Kawaki, not now," Boruto shouted, dodging a swipe from the Shinju. "Look up, the sky." Above them, the clouds parted, not by wind, but by displacement. A massive obsidian cruiser, the vanguard of the Otsutsuki Civil War fleet, pierced the atmosphere. The pressure of its entry flattened the forest for miles. From the ship, a single beam of disintegrating light fired down, aiming to obliterate both Boruto and Kawaki in a single stroke to clear the landing zone. It was too fast. Boruto's eye widened. Kawaki froze. There was no time to shrink it, no time to absorb it. Boom. The impact was silent at first, followed by a shockwave that shattered the surrounding mountains. But Boruto and Kawaki weren't dead. They opened their eyes to see a figure standing floating in the air before them, one hand raised to the heavens. The figure held the massive plasma beam in a suspended state of gravity, the energy crackling against an invisible barrier. The man wore the tattered remnants of the 7th Hokage's cloak, but the energy radiating from him wasn't the warm orange of the Nine Tails. It was a cold, oppressive violet aura that commanded the space around it. The man clenched his fist. The Rinnegan in his eyes spun violently. Bancho Tenin. Kai. Universal pull. Collapse. He crushed the plasma beam into a singularity the size of a marble and flicked it back at the ship. The resulting explosion in the upper atmosphere lit up the night like a second sun. The figure lowered himself slowly to the ground, turning to face the two stunned young men. The dust settled, revealing the whiskers, the blonde, spiky hair now streaked with white from the stress of the evolution, and those terrifying ripple-patterned eyes. "Dad," Boruto whispered, his sword clattering to the ground. The stoic mask he had worn for 3 years shattered instantly. "Lord 7th." Kawaki stepped back, shaking. "Impossible. I killed you. I sealed you." "You tried, Kawaki," Naruto said, his voice calm, but layered with a power that made the air vibrate. He didn't smile. This wasn't the goofy Naruto. This was a man who had stared into the abyss of space and survived. But the job isn't done. The Shinju clone, sensing the new threat, lunged at Naruto, screaming, "Source! New source!" Naruto didn't even look at it. He extended a single black receiver rod from his palm. In a blur of speed that surpassed even Baryon Mode's reflexes, using the Rinnegan's time-space manipulation to fold the distance, Naruto appeared behind the monster. The Shinju froze. A second later, it was bisected cleanly in half, dissolving into white dust. Naruto hadn't just cut it. He had absorbed the binding chakra that held its existence together. He turned back to his sons. The sky above was filling with more ships. The Civil War had arrived on their doorstep. "Boruto, Kawaki," Naruto commanded, the authority of the Hokage returning with the weight of a god. "Stop fighting each other. We are the only thing standing between this planet and extinction." He looked up at the armada, his Rinnegan glowing in the darkness. "Sasuke and I escaped their prison. Now, let's show them why they should have kept us locked up."